etat atra daityesvaranam anu bhungsva bhojan. Anybody would like to recite, please?
Sri Bhagavan Nuvacha Aikantino me mai jat vihashisha Ashasate muchra chaye bhavad viraha Atapi manvantaram etaratra Daidyeshwaranam anubhungshvabhogan.
Anyone else?
Sri Bhagavanu Vacha Naikantino me Maijat Vihashisha Ashasate Mutra Chaye Bhavad Vidaha Tatapi Manvantaram Etad Atra Daityeshwaranam Anubhungshvabhogan.
Die. Very nice. Anyone else? Okay, word for word. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, not a cantina unalloyed without desires except for the one desire for devotional service. Cantina unalloyed without desires except for the one desire for devotional service. May from me, Mai unto me, Jatu, any time, Iha, within this material world, Asisa, benedictions, Asasate, intent, desire, Amutra, in the next life, Cha, and, Ye, all such devotees who, Bhavat Vidha, like you, Tatapi, still, Manvantaram, the duration of time until the end of life of one Manu. Etat this, Atra, within this material world. Daitya Ishvaranam, of the opulences of materialistic persons. Anubhungsva, you can enjoy, Bogan, all material opulences. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Prahlad, a devotee like you never desires any kind of material opulences, either in this life or in the next. Nonetheless, I order you to enjoy the opulences of the demons in this material world, acting as their king until the end of the duration of time occupied by Manu. Krishna, welcome. Please bring some chairs. Purport. One Manu lives for a duration of time calculated to be an aggregate of 71 Yuga cycles, each of which equals 4,300,000 years. Although atheistic men like to enjoy material opulences, and they endeavor with great energy to build big residences, roads, cities, and factories, unfortunately, they cannot live more than 80, 90, or at the utmost 100 years. Although the materialist exerts so much energy to create a kingdom of hallucinations, he is unable to enjoy it for more than a few years. However, because Prahlad Maharaj was a devotee, the Lord allowed him to enjoy material opulence as the king of the materialists. Prahlad Maharaj had taken birth in the family of Hiranyakashipu, who was the topmost materialist. And since Prahlad was the bona fide heir of his father, the Supreme Lord allowed him to enjoy the kingdom created by his father for so many years that no materialist could calculate them. A devotee does not have to desire material opulence, but if he is a pure devotee, there is ample opportunity for him to enjoy material happiness also, without personal endeavor. Although everyone is advised to take to devotional service under all circumstances, if one desires material opulence, he can also become a pure devotee. I just want to repeat that section. But if he is a pure devotee, there is ample opportunity for him to enjoy material happiness also, without personal endeavor. Therefore, everyone is advised to take to devotional service under all circumstances. If one desires material opulence, he can also become a pure devotee, and his desires will be fulfilled. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.10, Akama sarvo kamo va moksha kama udar dihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one desires everything or nothing, or whether he desires to merge into the existence of the Lord, he is intelligent only if he worships Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by rendering devotional, loving service. Om Gyana Chimrandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakrunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhurevacha Patitanama Pavanebhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we see here in this verse, of course, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Nrsimhadev is speaking. We saw in previous verses that Prahlad Maharaj was making so many wonderful prayers. And, we read in a previous verse, O my Lord, best of the givers of benediction, if at all you want to bestow a desirable benediction upon me, then I pray you from your Lordship that within the core of my heart, there is no material desires. So this is how Prahlad Maharaj is praying. Lord Nrsimhadev is ready to give any benediction to Prahlad. And, he's requesting from Prahlad, name your benediction. And this is how Prahlad Maharaj is praying, in all humility, that no, there's nothing that I want, but if ever you want to give me a benediction, then this is a benediction. Please destroy all material desires, not just superficially, but within the core of my heart. And so, of course, here Lord Nrsimhadev is now speaking, and he's, bestowing benedictions upon Prahlad Maharaj, despite Prahlad Maharaj praying, please, I do not want anything. So in this verse, we see that he has given Prahlad Maharaj, because he never desires any kind of material opulences, that he gives him the benediction that he will rule over or enjoy material opulences of the demons in this material world, acting as their king until the end of the duration of time occupied by Manu. So this is the benediction he is granting Prahlad Maharaj, that you rule. Your father, Hiranyakashipu, was, the most opulent demon. He had conquered all three worlds, and in this way, he was just continuously trying to increase his opulence to the point where he had, made this prayer requesting immortality. And of course, he got all those benedictions thinking that he was immortal. So here's Prahlad Maharaj, we see he was tortured by his father in so many ways, repeatedly. But Prahlad Maharaj, despite all of this torture, what did he request from the Supreme Lord? He never made, prayers for protection, despite, his father trying so many ways to kill him, throw him off mountains, get trampled by elephants. But still, despite all of these trials and tribulations, that he was experiencing, being thrown off mountains, still Prahlad Maharaj was never praying for protection at any moment. All he was thinking about was how to share Krishna consciousness with everybody, including his classmates, very young children, of course. and children of so many powerful demons, still Prahlad Maharaj was just thinking in this way. And so now, of course, Lord Nrsingadev is offering this, mighty kingdom to Prahlad Maharaj. And in this verse, one angle one can understand, from Prabhupada in his translation, that he's giving to this, purport to the translation. He is showing that a devotee does not reject responsibility. So in this case, we see, he's giving this vast kingdom to Prahlad Maharaj. And we see so many examples of that in the Bhagavatam. The other classic example is Dhruva Maharaj. And of course, we understand the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj. He was insulted by his stepmother in such, difficult way that, Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj initially, went out seeking a kingdom bigger than his father. And, all the opulence that his father had. But we see, in his journey, eventually when he came face to face with the Supreme Lord, he had no desire. Still, by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he was granted rulership of the pole star planet. He never wanted it, He was expressing to the Supreme Lord at that time that, I went searching for how did he express it? I went searching for
broken pieces of glass.
Broken pieces of glass. But, now he has come face to face with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And, nothing could compare with that. He had no material desires whatsoever. So we see that we also spoke in previous verses about how, there's so many yogis that, want to just go and meditate in the forest, want to go to the Himalayas and so many places. So these are advanced, spiritual beings, souls that, chose not to interact, not to have anything to do, so to speak, with the material realm. In one sense, you can say that, they're just concerned about their liberation. And this is why they, do this. We see in the classic example of Arjuna as well, just before the battlefield had started, that, he could see, the way the dynasty had been split, that, he would have to fight, his martial guru, he had to fight, his family members, his grandfather, so many people he had to fight. And, at some point, he became perplexed what to do. And, he had made a decision at that point that, no, I do not want to participate in this war. There's just going to be bloodshed, so many casualties on both sides. And so his proposal to Krishna was, better I just go to the forest and meditate. I don't want to rule a kingdom. I don't want, this ghastly war to go forward. And so gradually we see, Krishna hears his side of the story of, how he thought things should unfold. But of course, at some point, he was able to surrender fully to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, and in this way become his disciple and, take guidance. And Krishna's message to him was that you're a Kshatriya. You have to do your duty. You have to fight. Set aside all of these, feelings that you think, how things should be, but you have to do your duty. And of course, it was a gradual process for him to get to that stage of realization. So we see Prahlad Maharaj is, not looking for wealth, not looking for mystic powers, not looking for so many things. He's asking for none of that. Why? Because love seeks service, not payment. So we see, Prahlad exemplifying this example. So imagine the child, he approaches his mother and the child says, I love you, mommy, because you buy me toys. So is this real love? Yes, it is very, very cute in one sense, but, we understand that love is not a business transaction, that just because you buy me toys. So, of course, we see as parents, nothing can compare to a mother's love for a child. She selflessly, sacrifices so much for her child. So this kind of love, um, we need to be able to study more and see, what is at the core of this kind of mother's love for a child. And this is, one of the closest examples of, a selfless type of love. So we don't want to get into business transactions. Again, in previous verses, Prahlad Maharaj was, also showing this example that, we do not want to make some requests, even for protection from the Supreme Lord. Sometimes, we make prayers, especially when in difficult situations. We make a prayer, please, my dear Lord, protect me in this time of calamity, or whatever's going on, this time of fear in my life. But then we remember the classic example of Queen Kunti, how she prayed, when there was so much of calamity, with her family members, that she was praying to the Supreme Lord, bring on the calamities in life. How many of us can pray like that? But of course, she was explaining that it is at times of calamities that I can remember you. Otherwise, every one of us forgets the Supreme Lord. It's only when there's calamity that I can remember you. And we understand that, the highest form of relationship with the Supreme Lords is one of love and selfless love. And we need to see how to remember the Lord at every moment in time, not just when there's difficulties. But, being human in this material world, we find that, the only time we go to the Supreme Lord is when we need some material facility. And so this, I guess, section of the Bhagavatam is, more about how not, to only approach the Supreme Lord when in times of needs or whenever we have some wants, because that is a business transaction. That, I will worship you, my dear Lord, if you can provide, X, Y, Z, and my long list of material desires that we have. And this is why Prahlad Maharaj was teaching that, requesting, my dear Lord, if you want to give me some benediction, just destroy material desire within the core of my heart. So he was also, expressing or understanding for our benefit that these desires are deep-seated. Sometimes we might not even know that we have such desires, over so many millions of lifetimes of birth, all these coverings layered within the heart. We see that some of these desires can be buried within the core of our hearts. So, a lot of work has to be done to uncover all of these desires which are deep-seated within our hearts. And how to do this? Prahlad Maharaj is giving again, the method and system for uncovering these things. And we do it, we understand from the Bhagavatam, in the association of devotees. We do it by one easy way. There's many, many ways, there's so many methods to achieve love of Godhead. But the easiest method by far, if we analyze, the Bhagavatam in detail, the easiest way is engage in devotional service of the Lord. And, he's not requesting go get some extra special skills, he's suggesting that whatever skill you have, somehow or the other, dovetail it in my devotional service. And in this way, we can gradually make progress in spiritual life. I'm remembering Bhagavad Gita 9:22. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. So our understanding is that Krishna is supplying all necessities that we need within this material world. Of course, the classic example is, Who's feeding the elephants in the jungle? Krishna is providing for everybody. Every living entity, he is providing. And, we do not have to get so caught up, in terms of our necessities in the material world. Yes, that verse is not giving us license to become irresponsible citizens in society. Yes, we need to chart out, we're in this material world. And again, Krishna addresses this point in the Bhagavad Gita that, everybody has to perform some work. But gradually, as Krishna progresses with imparting this knowledge on the yoga ladder, he expresses that we should not be attached to the results of the work. So everybody has to work, but do not get attached to the results. Leave the results to Krishna. So, another question we can ask is, why is the Lord giving Prahlad Maharaj, such a massive kingdom? Like we said, Hiranyakashipu had conquered, so many planetary systems. Still, here's the Supreme Personality of Godhead giving Prahlad Maharaj this, massive kingdom. So if pure devotees don't want any material opulence, why did Krishna give him immense opulence? So the understanding is that in a deeper sense, opulence is not the real issue at hand. It is how much are we attached to this opulence. And we see in the case of his father, Hiranyakashipu was 100% attached to this material opulence. So for the pure devotees of the Lord, we see that when opulence comes, they exclusively use it in the service of the Lord. 100%. There's no, 2 for you, my dear Lord, 1 for me, 3 for you, and then gradually it becomes 3 for you and 6 for me. And, in this way, this business dealing again comes there. But for the pure devotees of the Lord, we understand Prahlad Maharaj is also, one of the 14 Mahajans, great, pure devotees of the Lord. He is not attached to this material opulence. But we see, for our circumstances, whenever we get a little opulence, then, suddenly as devotees, we make these excuses that, I need, I think the other day in class we were mentioning, I need, Ray-Ban sunglasses, name brand this, name brand that. But what is the purpose of the glasses? To protect you from UV light. So we don't have to get into, all these name brand things, name brand clothing, and things like this. But this is our natural tendency, that we get attached to opulence. But we see the pure devotees of the Lord, they do not get attached to material opulence. We see, of course, in our founder Charya's situation, he was, also a very, very successful businessman, in his life. And Prabhupada said that, he wanted to spread Krishna consciousness as a rich man. He had made a whole plan of how to spread Krishna consciousness. And he was thinking, his business could help him. But what do we see? What was the Lord's plan? The Lord's plan was very different. At some point, Prabhupada had practically nothing. We understand he came to the West with a few rupees only, nothing, no personal belongings, no wealth, nothing. Yet we see today ISKCON is, such an amazing institution worldwide. And of course, in a few days, we'll be celebrating ISKCON's 60th anniversary in New York. So many, leaders are all gathering to celebrate ISKCON's 60th anniversary. So we see in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, even though he was, going to take up this reign of ruling the kingdom, and it's explained he was going to rule the kingdom for a very, very long time, acting as their king until the end of the duration of the time occupied by Manu. And then Prabhupada gives some calculations. One Manu lives for a duration of time calculated to be an aggregate of 71 yuga cycles, each of which equals 4,300,000 years. So a very, very long time. Prahlad Maharaj, was going to be ruling this kingdom. But we see in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, as a pure devotee, he was going to rule the kingdom on the Lord's behalf, not for his own name, fame, and opulence in this way. But he was, going to take this responsibility on behalf of the Supreme Lord. And we see, of course, contrary to the way his father was ruling, Hiranyakashipu was trying to use everything for his own sense gratification. This was, his number one goal. He was wanting more and more power, more and more power. He had conquered, even the demigods, and, was just so greedy for power. But ultimately, we see, all of that greed and power, he met his end when Lord Nrsingadev had appeared. So also for Bhagavad Gita, we mentioned work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in the material world. So we said one has to perform, their duty in the material world, has to perform some work, but we should not get attached to the results. Otherwise, once we get attached to the results, what's the outcome going to be? Whether it's going to be good or bad, but either way, if we get attached to the outcome, work will cause bondage. And, we'll continue in this cycle of repeated birth and death. So we see in society today, there are so many, wonderful, advanced devotees, holding big, big positions in society, CEOs of companies, high positions in government. We see the classic example, of course, is the Goswamis. They had also, held high government positions. Still, they were not, chasing all of these wealth of these positions. They were just interested in Krishna consciousness and spreading this Krishna consciousness all over the world. Yeah, the verse that clearly, gives this point of not being attached to the fruits of your action is 247. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. So the idea is that we need to be focused on devotional service. Serving the Supreme Lord does not matter what the outcome is. So we see, for practical example's sake, if one has a successful career today in society, that, we should not get caught up in this materialistic mentality that, I have to continue to work to become successful. We should have a devotional mentality. And by that we mean I work to maintain my service and my dependence. So the idea for working in the world today is, of course, we have to do some duty, but the work is not the goal of life. That, this is what I'm all about. The work is a means to an end. So we want to understand this core principle that we are living in this material world, undergoing this material experiences within this world today, but this is not our real home. We are eternally spiritual beings, and our real home is in the spiritual world. So the idea is we want to go back home, back to Godhead, back to the spiritual home, our spiritual home, to be with our eternal Father, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And Prabhupada, by his great mercy, he has come to the West, given us this process and Krishna consciousness, and a means by which we can return home back to Godhead in this very lifetime. Yes, seems, very, very challenging. We can see society today is, just going mad in every facet of life, just the entire world, not just, here in America or just the entire world, There's just so much of dissidence, so much of chaos, uh, so much of suffering in this material world. All of these things are being exposed. Doesn't matter whether you're first world country, whether you're third world country, there's just so much of misery uh, in this material world. And now more than ever, we can see it being shown. So the idea is when we have a material job, there's nothing wrong with, keeping a material job. Of course, some jobs are better than others. So some guidance might be necessary from time to time. But the idea is we want to engage our propensities, see how to dovetail, whatever our nature is, in the service or devotional service of the Supreme Lord. So we need to understand that, when I'm earning money, what am I using the money for? Am I using it for my own sense gratification? And, this can eventually gradually snowball and, work to our disadvantage. Again, think about Hiranyakashipu, he was just working for himself, just trying to, accumulate more and more material things. So the idea is we do not want to go down that path of keep feeding our material desires, because we understand that, money cannot buy everything. We see people in Hollywood who have unlimited amounts of cash, still not happy. Still so many suicides in Hollywood, so many people, drug overdoses. Why? What's going on? There has to be something more than money. So the idea is, not to get caught up in this material world, to understand things in proper perspective, that we want to use whatever income we're earning properly in the service of the Supreme Lord. And, there's so much given in the Bhagavatam of how to properly utilize, our money, how to spend it very, very wisely, and how much do I keep for savings? How much do I use for family members? All of these formulas are given. We don't have to speculate about these things. So the idea is that, if we use it in the devotional service of the Lord, this is the best use of one's income from keeping a job. Because again, wealth is not, the real issue. It is how we're utilizing it in the service of the Supreme Lord that will give us the best benefit. So we see that also in this verse, what's being highlighted is that, of course, Lord Nishingadev could have easily taken Prahlad Maharaj back home, back to Godhead. But what did he do? He gave him this kingdom to rule till the end of this life of Manu. And we see, that there is hidden mercy being communicated by this example. And we see in, our everyday lives, there's also, like I was explaining, so many nice devotees holding all these high positions, showing that leading by example, teaching that, this is possible. Otherwise, if we don't have, real life examples around us today in society, amongst devotees mainly, that, one can quickly become despondent. But where are all the examples? Yes, all these nice examples are in the Bhagavatam, but around us in everyday life, where are all these nice examples teaching the way in a very, very practical way, how we can live in this world, but understand this is not our home. So many nice examples are there in society today. We can look around us. This is the kind of association we want. Some senior devotees, who understand this principle at its core, that this is not our real home. We want to make a plan, like we said previously, how to go back home, back to Godhead. So in summary, few points. Prahlad Maharaj is teaching, these eternal truths. Do not serve Krishna for payment. Material opulence is not the actual evil. When we get attached to it, this is, when things start to get messed up. Success, of course, is not measured by possessions, but we understand that success is measured by devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the idea is use everything in Krishna's service. Of course, we understand that Krishna does not need anything. But of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, he's explaining, if one offers me with devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, then I will accept it. So in this way, we don't have to get too caught up about, the only way I can serve the Supreme Lord is by becoming, wealthy, but because it's a dangerous path to tread. And of course, a devotee ultimately wants to sincerely depend on Krishna. That, just like how we said, Krishna is, even providing for the elephants. Krishna will provide everything we need in this lifetime. Now, as I said, we do not, have to shift blame and say, okay, I'll do nothing. No, we have to take responsibility. Like in this case, Prahlad Maharaj was taking responsibility for ruling such a massive kingdom. So we need to become responsible citizens in society and show by example of how we can be living in this world, but not of this world. So we see Prahlad Maharaj, he is not standing before Lord Nrsingadev for any wealth, power, prestige, or liberation. But we see in his example, and so many others, that Krishna gave everything. Everything. We see even the other classic examples is Sudama Brahman. When he went to visit Lord Krishna, he was so poor, so poverty-stricken. He had practically nothing. His wife had given him some chipped rice to go and give to your friend. He was so embarrassed that he didn't even want to take it out. He was so embarrassed about his poverty-stricken condition. But his devotion and love for Krishna was so deep and so grave that, he eventually produced this, chipped rice, and Krishna was so eagerly accepting, the love of Sudama Brahman. And so, he doesn't want anything, but we see in that example also what happened. Because of this love and devotion, cent per cent, Krishna was granting all opulence. So, we do not have to make any endeavors for opulence. It will come according to, our karma, whatever providence, has in store. We do not have to make a separate endeavor. All we have to do is focus on the devotional service of the Lord. And in this way, we see how Krishna is advising Arjuna, and of course, for all of our benefit, in Bhagavad Gita 1866, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So I'll stop there. Hare Krishna. Any comments, questions, corrections, additions? We have a few devotees online also that are hearing and participating in the class. So everybody's got it figured out what their duty is, what they're going to do, how they're going to execute it. Take Prahlad Maharaj's example. And soon everybody will become rulers of their own kingdoms. Seems very nice. Devotional service. This should be the goal. And like Prahlad Maharaj was saying, kill all these material desires within the core of my heart. If we met Lord Nishingadev face to face, what are we going to pray for? My dear Lord. My dear Lord, I don't want 3 cars. I just want one cheap car. No thoughts, realizations, devotees, anyone?
Hare Krishna.
Haribo, Dasya.
Thank you. I just caught the tail end of this class, but thank you. I was wondering, yeah, we hear this idea of money management from Rupa Goswami, where it's like 50% you give to the service of the Lord, 25% for family, and 25% for emergencies. I believe that's what it said.
Right.
But like someone might say, like this seems very extreme and impractical, and you know, I think the Christians give like 10%. So yeah, someone might just be discouraged by that and be like, all right, that's too much. I'm not even gonna give anything, because like maybe someone like all or nothing mentality. So if you could speak on that, like, am I rascal if I don't give 50%?
I don't think it's a question of being rascal. I think, recently I've just heard from some senior devotees. I think it's about having faith in the Supreme Lord, and also like Devamrita Maharaj, Guru Maharaj always shares in his classes that, when we come to Krishna consciousness, we can also consider that, there is this process of bhakti, and he invites, everyone, come to this bhakti lab and do the experiment. Let's try it and see what happens. And, the practical result, it seems like, is that Krishna wins every time. And of course, when Krishna wins, we also win. Like in the case of Prahlad Maharaj and, so many other devotees we were quoting from the Bhagavatam. So there is this group of devotees, I forget what they call themselves. They have some title. But there is this group of devotees, wealthy business people especially, that have started, and it's, I think, going on for a few years now. It's not just something brand new, but many, many years, where because of their accumulation of wealth, these Vaishya type devotees, who have significant wealth, they have been counseling, giving association, guidance, and shelter to other successful, I don't know if it's just devotees or maybe non-devotees, but other, wealthy persons who have come into Krishna consciousness or contact with devotees, that do an experiment. Just try it. Just try to give. I don't know if they're using 50%. I don't think they're using 50% formula, but use a significant portion of your wealth could be savings or whatever, calculation they've worked out, but use a significant portion of it in the service of the Supreme Lord, however you feel fit, and see the practical result. And, I've heard from a few devotees in this type of Sangha that, it's a repeatable formula. It's not just, there's a few devotees that have failed, but it seems to be just a repeatable formula that, it's a principle beyond this world. So I would say we should, try it. And of course, Prabhupada says so many places in his preaching, in his lectures, in his books, it's a gradual process. So I would say, a devotee considering, Rupa Goswami's formula or not, that at least if we want to be like the Christians, okay, let's try 10%, let's try 1% and see what happens. And of course, we understand as devotees that, whenever we take one step towards Krishna, he'll always take more than 10 towards us. So I think if we just practically try this formula out, not necessarily, if we don't have this kind of shraddha yet, faith that, it will work, that we take baby steps and, gradually make advancement on this royal road of bhakti. Anyone else has any thoughts or comments on that point?
If somebody's...
Yes, Madalili Kishori, and then we can hear from Kaliya Damana Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your class this morning, Dhruva. This has been fantastic. I've had so many classes with you this week. It's wonderful. But it's interesting when Dasha brought that up, and he's talking about the tithe in Christian community, the 10%, which is actually supposed to be 10% of your gross income, not your net income. So like say you just made $1,000 a month and after taxes you had $750, it doesn't matter. You're still supposed to give,
Right.
100, not 75. Right. But what's interesting about the tithe was the original use for it. First of all, it's a commandment. It wasn't a suggestion given by priests. It was a commandment that was given by God. And God doesn't need your money, right? Krishna doesn't need my money. He doesn't need anything that I really, right? He has everything, all opulences. But the point of the tithe was actually to be put in a storehouse for the care of the community. So that no one, for example, let's say in Krishna consciousness, there should never be a devotee who, for example, would say, I came under these difficult circumstances and I can't pay my mortgage and my family is going to be homeless. Or an elderly devotee who it's like, well, what's going to happen to them now? They're going to be turned down in the street or they're going to end up in secular care somewhere. That what he said was you should be able then to come to the storehouse. And the kings were supposed to manage that money in such a way that no one in the community suffered. And they all had the benefit of being able to serve God because they weren't worried about material things. They knew that they'd be cared for. So that is more my question. And you see that how it's become these mega churches in the Christian community, these people who are, I'm flying a helicopter, and my parishioners are like living in the street because they're so busy trying to give me 10% of what little bit they have. And they're giving it to a man and not to the kingdom of God. And then the Lord Jesus said, seek first God. Don't worry about what you're going to wear, how much money you're going to have, but seek the kingdom of God, the spiritual world. And then all those things God will take care of based on, like you said, who you are, your karma, what you're able to manage. So I guess my question, because I hear a lot in different classes in ISKCON about 50%. But then I have been in situations where they're like, well, this devotee is in so much trouble. We're doing a GoFundMe. And I'm like, okay. So my question is then what becomes, what happens there? But because he said, he didn't just say, I'm giving you opulences, Prahlad, go hang out and have a good time. Do your thing. He said, you're going to rule, which gave him a responsibility, right? And an accountability. And Prahlad had been doing that all along. They're throwing this little boy off a cliff and he's still going, I'm just trying to preach and tell people that they should serve the Lord, right? Like, that's all fine and well, but I'm really trying to get people to understand they need to serve God. So obviously, he had demonstrated he was going to be a just ruler. So that, I guess, is my question, is that's wonderful, but then what's the accountability and what's the responsibility of those who then, because it goes somewhere, you're not just giving 50% into a void. I know that I'm very mindful of where I donate money in ISKCON, that it's for Sankirtan or it's for the building of something that then will serve the community and get Krishna consciousness out there. But I like to know what I'm doing, where that money is going, you know. But where's the accountability in that? I would like to know. And then what is happening with the care for the devotees? I think at some point they said that Srila Prabhupada said, maybe we need to start taking care of what we've built and not worry so much about expansion before he passed away. And so I guess that's my question, is how is that being demonstrated in this movement? Hare Krishna.
Yes, tough question. But yes, I think Mother Lila Kushori, your point is, very, very valid, that, unless one is able to demonstrate, in the bigger scheme of things, of course, we see the entire Bhagavatam, so many amazing rulers were there where they were taking care of the citizens, completely and wholly. And so in this way, then, there can be some balance in society. Then there can be this focus on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, there's always just going to be chaos, as we can see, as Kali Yuga progresses. So, we should not also forget about, this current age that we're living in. It is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And so, that brings its own flavor into all, the corruption, all of the drama that's, going on in the material world today. And we see, even spiritual societies are affected, by this impact of this age of Kali. And so it takes, real serious contemplation and devotion to be able to sift through this. Of course, we understand, Maya in this age of Kali is very, very powerful, being such a servant of the Lord, that she's continuously luring even devotees, even senior devotees, so to speak. We see in ISKCON, we have such a track record that, so many devotees have fallen down. Because why? Maya is very, very powerful. This is the age of Kali. So, we should not become naive, I think, and just think, okay, I'm just gonna, give indiscriminately, and, Krishna needs to manage. Why are we giving responsibility to Krishna? We can use our intelligence. We have, been given this minute independence, where we can choose. So we should choose wisely where we are giving. So I think, the way you're understanding and, using your discretion, that if there's no accountability, if there's no, transparency of, how donations are being utilized, then, there's so many worthy causes, even within our own society. So, we see there's, of course, so many cases of mismanagement around the world, not, just in the West or just in the East, but around the world. So much of mismanagement is there. So that, one needs to use it wisely. Dasya Prem Prabhu, was, I guess, those comments, any more, your realizations on that point? Yeah, some discrimination has to be there, Lila Kushori, I think, so that we do not make the same mistakes within the society. Sometimes we feel helpless, when we hear about different situations of mismanagement, and, ultimately we leave it to the persons in leadership, but still on a ground level, we can see that, we can use our intelligence of, where we're giving, and give wisely, And of course, these donations that we're giving, came after so much of endeavor, so much of sacrifice that we had to make in our lives. So all the more reason to use Krishna's Lakshmi very, very wisely, and not, just indiscriminately give or donate like that. Because ultimately we understand that when we do give, if we do give unwisely, we also partake in the reaction. So the idea is, the beggars in the street, the classic example given is, sometimes one feels pity, okay, this person is begging, let me give. But, if one is indiscriminately giving, especially cash, money to such a beggar who, might have so many addictions, drunkard or whatever it is, then in this way we're facilitating them, because they'll use that cash to buy more alcohol and, stay in this repeated cycle. So we need to be able to give wisely so that we do not get implicated in, this reaction. So it's a whole deeper subject matter of us donating as well. So thank you. I think the deities are going to open. We can continue to discuss for those online. Yeah, I need, yeah, hopefully Prema doesn't catch me. Okay, anyone else has more thoughts and realizations that they want to share? There's many projects in ISKCON where we can.
Hare Krishna.
Libro Prabhu.
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts. Don't know where to begin. Yes, one should donate wisely. There are lots of factors to take into account. You have to be careful. You have to be responsible. The Lakshmi in our care, of course, is Krishna's Lakshmi. So we have to be responsible with it. And unfortunately, sometimes donations made with all good intentions may be handled in irresponsible ways by others. So we have to exercise some discretion when we choose to make donations. As far as how much one should donate, it is the perennial mantra of the householders that I cannot afford to give 50%. Every householder will say that. No matter how much they make, they will say that. The fact is that at least generally speaking, what happens is that an individual and a family will tend to always live up to their income. So if somehow or other I earn some particular amount, I will tend to spend it all and then cry poverty. That's the tendency. We live up to our income. So so the spiritual principle is that before we make plans to spend what we've earned, we make sure Krishna gets his cut right off the top, and then we make our plans based upon what's left over. Because Maya will always dictate, you need this, you want this. We'll find all these different ways to spend the money, and we will persuade ourselves that I need this, I need to spend this. I cannot get by with a Volkswagen I must have a Tesla. Or if I remember one temple president explaining to me why he needed to have a Mercedes rather than some less expensive vehicle. He needed to have a very luxurious Mercedes because um, because it's a very reliable vehicle, and that way he will not have to spend a lot of money in the future in maintenance costs. So, you can rationalize your expenditures in all different kinds of ways. And with Maya's help, you will never have difficulty to find a way to rationalize spending Lakshmi. The art is to not fall victim to Maya and somehow or other render devotional service. So your Lakshmi, whatever you have earned, Srila Prabhupada explains it. You should not think of it as an asset. Rather than an asset, it is actually a liability. Your Lakshmi becomes a source of bondage, and it becomes a source of misery. It becomes a source of anxiety. It will create problems for you. It will generate karmic reactions. If it's not spent in devotional service, it's increasing your bondage. It's not neutral. Lakshmi, if it's not spent in devotional service, then it's going to do harm. Now, Lakshmi spent for basic maintenance is also devotional service. Maintaining some percentage against emergencies is devotional service. It's just being responsible. But we have to be careful because, it's the way that it works. For decades, I've watched, householders, no matter how much they earn, it doesn't matter how much they earn, they can earn fabulous amounts of money and they will cry poverty. Prabhu, I cannot afford to give 50%. But they've got a huge, fabulous home, sometimes multiple homes, and multiple luxurious vehicles. They take very expensive vacations to various destinations around the world. Maybe multiple times a year, they make trips to India. Lots of money spent for all kinds of things. Their home is filled with all kinds of expensive items, but no money for devotional service. So, it's an issue. It's a real thing. This is what happens. As much as you earn, you will find a way to spend it, and you will persuade yourself that this is necessary. I need this. It's important. It's necessary. So we have to be careful of that. We have to try to understand what our real needs are and to be honest and not allow Maya to dictate and run our life. At the same time, you cannot be irresponsible with Lakshmi. It's important to be responsible. You cannot count on anyone else bailing you out when times are bad. That might happen or it might not, but it's your responsibility to provide for yourself. And if you're a householder, especially for a householder, it's your responsibility not only to provide for yourself, you have a duty to provide for all of your family members. You have to provide for all of their needs. You have to provide for all kinds of contingencies. You have to be prepared in the event of ill health. You have to be able to provide proper medical care, clothing, shelter, food, all the various necessities, educational expenses in some cases, and emergencies expenses that you may not be able to anticipate. So all those things have to be taken into account. But the tendency is that as soon as we get Lakshmi, we want to spend it on sense gratification, and then there's nothing left for the important things. So there's that. But then when we do choose to give Lakshmi in devotional service, we have to be careful. If it's a question of donating to a temple that does not account for the expenditure of the Lakshmi, I would be careful. There should be accountability. You should get receipts, at least so that you can, make a tax deduction, but you should see receipts for how the Lakshmi was spent. Because who else is going to take responsibility for the accounting? You have to make sure that the Lakshmi is actually spent properly, that it's spent on what it was supposed to be spent for. Is it actually going for the construction that was, that you donated for, or is the temple president pocketing some portion of it, or or is it going to other projects that you did not intend to fund? Is it being wasted? That can happen. Sometimes there's a lot of waste. So you have to pay attention. Anyway, this is just my practical experience, having, been around ISKCON for a while, and doing a lot of donating of Lakshmi. I've sometimes been pretty disappointed, and I've regretted sometimes failing to take more responsibility for oversight of Lakshmi that I've contributed. So that's my advice, rather than becoming regretful and bitter later on. Take an active role in making sure that things go on nicely. Don't act rashly. Think things through carefully. Talk with authorities, and make sure you understand precisely what's going on, because sometimes things happen. We want to trust devotees. We want to contribute to Srila Prabhupada's movement, but the movement is comprised of individuals, and individuals are human, and they're also subject to Maya, and sometimes things happen. So you have to be careful. Anyway, 50%. Srila Prabhupada insisted that his disciples give 50%, and I'm pretty sure most of them resolved for themselves that was impossible, and they didn't do it. But as Yashodeva Prabhu suggested in the comments, Dave Ramrita Swami, he quotes that time is money, so grihastas should give their time for devotional service if they can't afford to give Lakshmi. And that's, incredibly sound and reasonable. And that's what devotees have done historically. When you truly feel that, your your earnings are just so strained. It's not possible for you to give 50% and still be able to afford to survive. So then you render service. You give your time as far as possible. And if one day you do come into some money, you inherit something or whatever, or there's some kind of a windfall, somehow something happens, then you can try to make up for all the donations you did not make in the past. Rather than immediately deciding, okay, I'm going to upgrade my standard of living. I've been living at this particular level. Now suddenly I have more money, so I'm going to get a bigger house and a newer car, and we're gonna spend a few weeks in Fiji or Tahiti or something, and Hawaii. You try to keep a record of what you didn't give, and try to make up for it later if possible. If it's a great mentality if we feel some regret when we're not able to contribute, or not able to contribute up to the 50% standard. But a householder is supposed to support himself, his family, and the rest of society. Now, in Vedic times, when there were saintly kings, they would make sure that there was no hardship for anyone in their kingdom. That's the duty of a king. But ISKCON is not a kingdom. There is not a king of ISKCON. The temple president is not a king. The temple president may be regarded as a priest. He is a Vaishnava. He is, but he doesn't have the duty and responsibility of a Kshatriya. It is actually not the duty of the temple necessarily to ensure support for everyone. Nonetheless, Srila Prabhupada has imposed certain duties on our temples that no one within a 10-mile radius of the temple should go hungry. Farm projects in particular are supposed to feed everyone. Within a 10-mile radius, everyone should be adequately provided for in terms of sustenance, food. No one should be hungry.
Everything okay? Good.
And but it's my point is that I'm trying to refocus the where the responsibility is supposed to be placed in Vedic culture. It is particularly householders that are responsible for the maintenance of everyone. The burden is not placed on the temples. Temples will provide all kinds of charity. Dharmshala is shelter, and prasad are often provided by temples, but the actual duty in the system of varna and ashram, it is a duty of the householders to provide for. Householder provides for his family. He provides for he supports not just contributing to, but it's his job to support the brahmacharis and the vanaprasthas and the sannyasis, and also to support the temple. That's the duty of a householder. So if that seems burdensome to you, then perhaps you don't want to be a householder.
We can come, yeah.
To be a grihasta means you have immense responsibilities, and you are responsible by the laws of nature. You are responsible for the sustenance of many others. Actually, not even just the human beings, even animals you are supposed to provide for if you're a householder. So the duties and responsibilities of a householder are immense. It's a very great burden. And that should be understood before entering the household ashram. Sometimes someone enters a household or ashram for whatever reason, and there may be many reasons. Some of them may not be good reasons. And then their maximum earning potential is insufficient even to provide for themselves, what to speak of others. We had instances like that with some frequency early in the movement. And, before we woke up and had enough sense to understand that, before we become householders, we should have a means of livelihood secured so that we can actually meet the responsibilities of household life. Not that you just jump into the household ashram and then struggle to try to find a way to support yourself. Many gurus made it a rule for their disciples that if you want to get married, first demonstrate that you can support a family. Have that in place first, and then we can talk about marriage. Not that you place, you have a family and place them into difficulty because, you didn't establish sufficient income to support them. Anyway, for the brahmacharis, this is all incentive to remain brahmachari. It's really, really hard to be a householder. It's really hard. And if you're an attached householder and you have an enjoying spirit, you want to enjoy the fruits of your labor, then you're going to have a really hard time. Your earnings, your assets will become a source of bondage and a source of pain. You will suffer. Unavoidably, you will suffer. Giving your Lakshmi in devotional service is it frees you from bondage, it relieves you of suffering, and it purifies your heart, and it reaps transcendental profit, spiritual profit. You gain spiritual assets. So it's beneficial in every way, materially and spiritually. It's beneficial. Otherwise, you hang on to those so-called assets, it becomes a source of big trouble. People don't realize that, but it's a fact. It's a fact. The more you hang on to it, the more you're going to have to suffer unavoidably. It's the way the material nature is engineered. For some, it's hard to realize that. But we have assurances from our acharyas that that's the way it works. The faithful will accept it even if they don't understand it. Those are some of my thoughts. It's already 8:30. Sorry to carry us so far over time. Oh, Dhruva Prabhu, are you still there?
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. Would have been nice if we had at least 30 members on the call, but nevertheless, Krishna has arranged that we hear your purport. Thank you for
I just
sharing.
want to say that if you turned off or unplugged anything in Tulsi Devi's room, it's very important that you return it to the condition it was in previously, or Prema Sankirtana Dasi will go ballistic.
Yes, no, I did plug the fan back in. Done. Thank you. Anyone else wants to share some last thoughts on how we can understand this better? It's a deep subject matter, but Taragapu, thanks for, I think you hit all the notes on this discussion. All right, then. Thank you, devotees. That's your prem. Yeah, go. Go ahead.
No, that was an accident. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but nice notes. We can talk more. Thank you. Take care. Thanks, Mother Lady Kishori. Thanks, Dasya. Thanks, Taraka Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.